I came home that evening, bone-tired from a long day at the clinic, hoping to unwind with a glass of wine and some mindless TV. Instead, I walked into a scene straight out of a nightmare. There was Dolores, my mother-in-law, rearranging my living room as if it were her own. She glanced up, not a hint of guilt on her face, and waved a spare key at me like it was a winning lottery ticket. "Mallory, dear, I thought I'd help out a bit," she chirped, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that makes your teeth hurt. I felt my stomach twist. My name is Mallory, and I'd been married to Bryce for all of 6 months. I knew Dolores was a force to be reckoned with, but this was a new level of intrusion. "Dolores, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Inside, I was anything but. I felt like a guest in my own home, and it was infuriating. "Oh, just tidying up. You know how busy things can get," she said, smoothing a cushion that didn't need smoothing. Her eyes flitted around the room, assessing her handiwork. I watched her, trying to decide if I should laugh or scream. "I appreciate the thought, but I'd prefer if you asked before coming over," I said, my words carefully measured. Dolores paused, her smile faltering for just a second, before she plastered it back on. "Of course, dear. I just want to make sure you two are comfortable." "Comfortable? Right." I clenched my teeth, feeling anything but. Bryce had mentioned his mother's tendency to be overbearing, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. I needed space, a chance to build a life with Bryce without her constant shadow looming over us. Bryce walked in just then, his eyes darting between us. "Hey, what's going on?" he asked, sensing the tension. "Your mother was just leaving," I said, giving him a look that I hoped conveyed the urgency of the situation. Dolores chuckled, patting Bryce's arm. "I'll see myself out." "We'll talk later, Bryce," she said, breezing past him like she owned the place. Once she was gone, I turned to Bryce, frustration boiling over. "Bryce, we need to set some boundaries. She can't just come and go as she pleases." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Mallory. It's just she's been like this my whole life. I didn't think it would bother you so much." "Well, it does," I said, softer this time. "I need to feel like this is our home, not hers." Bryce nodded, looking more conflicted than ever. "I'll talk to her. I promise." As he pulled me into a hug, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Dolores was not the type to back down easily. And as I stood there in Bryce's arms, I realized I had to be ready to fight for the life we wanted. As much as I hoped for peace, I sensed a storm was brewing, and I needed to brace myself for whatever was coming next. The next few weeks felt like living in a pressure cooker. Dolores's visits became more frequent, her presence a constant shadow over our lives. Each time she showed up unannounced, I felt the walls of our home closing in, the space that was supposed to be ours shrinking under her watchful eye. "Mallory, have you thought about rearranging the kitchen? It could be so much more efficient," Dolores suggested one afternoon, her tone making it clear that it was less of a suggestion and more of an expectation. She was sitting at our kitchen table, sipping tea like she owned the place. I forced a smile, my hands gripping the edge of the counter. "I'll think about it, Dolores. But I kind of like it the way it is." She raised an eyebrow, her lips curving into a knowing smile. "Of course, dear. Just a thought." Bryce walked in, oblivious to the tension that hung in the air like fog. "Hey, what's up?" he asked, looking between us with that same hopeful expression he always wore, like he believed peace was just a conversation away. "Your mother was just giving me some tips on kitchen organization," I said, my voice light but my eyes pleading with him to see the bigger picture. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom's always been good at that." I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath and turned back to the dishes, letting the clatter of plates drown out the unspoken words between us. Later that night, as Bryce and I lay in bed, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Bryce, we need to talk about your mom." He sighed, turning to face me in the dim light. "I know, Mal. I don't want to hurt her feelings." "What about my feelings?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like a stranger in my own home." Bryce reached for my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "I'll talk to her. I promise." But promises were starting to feel like empty words. I needed action. I needed him to stand with me, not just for me. Just when I thought things couldn't get more tangled, Dolores dropped a bombshell during one of her visits. "Oh, by the way, I'm planning a little family dinner next weekend. I hope you both can make it." I blinked, caught off guard. "A dinner?" "Yes, just a small gathering. I think it's important for us all to spend more time together," she said, her eyes fixed on Bryce, daring him to disagree. Bryce hesitated, glancing at me. "We'll see, Mom. We might have plans." Dolores's smile didn't waver, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a challenge. "Well, I do hope you can come." As she left, I felt the weight of her expectations settle over us like a heavy blanket. The dinner was more than just a meal. It was a test, a chance for Dolores to assert her control. I turned to Bryce, determination hardening my resolve. "We need to set boundaries, Bryce. Before it's too late." He nodded, but I could sense his hesitation, the pull of his mother's influence still strong. As much as I wanted to believe things would change, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something bigger. A storm that would test every promise we'd made to each other. The attic was a dusty, forgotten corner of our home, a place I rarely ventured. But that Saturday, as I rifled through old boxes in search of winter coats, I stumbled upon something that stopped me cold. A weathered photo album, its cover peeling at the edges. Curiosity piqued. I sat down amidst the clutter and began to flip through its pages. The photos were a mix of faded memories and moments frozen in time. Pictures of Bryce as a child, his hair a wild mop of curls, grinning at the camera. But it was the photos of Dolores that caught my attention. There she was, younger and happier, her smile genuine in a way I hadn't seen before. One photo in particular stood out. Dolores with a man I didn't recognize, their arms around each other. A spark in her eyes that seemed so out of character from the woman I knew. I showed the photo to Bryce later, hoping for some insight. He frowned, studying it closely. "That's strange. I don't remember Mom ever mentioning him. Do you think it's important?" I asked, trying to read his expression. He shrugged, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a hint of unease. "Maybe, but it's probably nothing." But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like a piece of a puzzle I hadn't even realized I was trying to solve. I tucked the photo back into the album, my mind buzzing with questions. The following week, Dolores's dinner loomed over us like a dark cloud. The tension between Bryce and me was palpable, each of us tiptoeing around the growing rift. The dinner felt less like a family gathering and more like a battleground, each of us bracing for the inevitable clash. As we arrived at Dolores's house, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The air was thick with unspoken words, and I could sense Bryce's apprehension as we stepped inside. Dolores greeted us with her usual charm, but there was an edge to her smile, a challenge lurking beneath the surface. Dinner started off uneventfully, the conversation polite and superficial. But as the evening wore on, Dolores's probing questions and veiled comments became harder to ignore. "So, Mallory, how's the dental practice? Must be exhausting keeping up with everything," Dolores said, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. "It's busy, but I manage," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Dolores nodded, her gaze lingering on me a moment too long. "I suppose it's hard to balance work and family. Some things are just more important." The implication hung in the air, heavy and accusatory. Bryce shifted uncomfortably, his fork clattering against his plate. "Mom, can we not do this tonight?" Dolores's eyes flashed, her smile tight. "I'm just making conversation, dear." The tension was suffocating, and I felt my patience slipping. But before I could say anything, Gerald, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Dolores, perhaps we should let them enjoy their evening without the third degree." Dolores's expression faltered, a crack in her facade. "I'm just concerned, Gerald. And I appreciate that," he said gently. "But they need space to figure things out on their own." His words were a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone in Bryce's family was against us. But they also stirred something in Dolores, a defensiveness that made her bristle. As we left that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The photo, the dinner, Dolores's relentless need to control. It all felt connected, like pieces of a much larger puzzle. And as Bryce and I drove home in silence, I realized that the path to understanding Dolores's behavior might lead us to secrets that could change everything. The following day, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something crucial. The photo of Dolores with the mysterious man lingered in my mind, an itch I couldn't scratch. I decided to return to the attic, hoping to uncover more pieces of the puzzle. As I rummaged through boxes, my fingers brushed against something brittle and old, a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. I sat back on my heels, heart pounding as I carefully untied the ribbon and began to read. The letters were from Dolores's mother, filled with a mixture of love and disappointment, chronicling a strained relationship that mirrored the one Dolores seemed to have with Bryce. Each letter was a glimpse into the past, revealing a woman who had struggled with her own demons, projecting them onto her daughter. The words were raw and unfiltered, and I could almost hear the echo of past arguments and unresolved pain. As I read, A picture began to form of Dolores not as the villain I had painted her to be, but as someone trapped in a cycle she couldn't break. It was a revelation that made my heart ache with a mix of empathy and frustration. That evening, I sat across from Bryce, the letters laid out on the table between us. "I found these in the attic," I said, watching his reaction closely. He picked up a letter, reading it with furrowed brows. "I had no idea," he murmured, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Mom never talked about her mother like this. It explains a lot, doesn't it?" I said softly, hoping he could see the connection as clearly as I did. Bryce nodded, a shadow passing over his face. "I guess it does. But what do we do with this?" I hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "We need to talk to her. Maybe if she sees that we understand, things might change." His eyes met mine, filled with uncertainty. "You really think she'll open up?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But we have to try." The next day, we invited Dolores over for dinner. As she sat at our table, the tension was palpable, a silent undercurrent beneath the surface. I took a deep breath, pushing the letters towards her. "Dolores, we found these in the attic," I said, watching her closely. Her eyes widened as she recognized the handwriting, a flicker of something, fear, anger, or maybe both, crossing her face. "Where did you find these?" she asked, her voice tight. "In a box with some old photos," Bryce said gently. "We just wanted to understand." Dolores's hands trembled slightly as she picked up a letter, her eyes scanning the familiar words. "These are private," she said, her voice breaking. "I know," I replied softly, "but we thought they might help us understand what's been happening." For a moment, I thought she might shut down, retreat behind the walls she'd built. But then something shifted. Her shoulders sagged, and she looked at us with a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "I never wanted to be like her," she whispered, the admission hanging in the air like a fragile thread. The moment was raw and unexpected, a crack in the armor she'd worn for so long. It was a turning point, a chance to rebuild or watch everything crumble. As we sat there, the letters between us, I realized that the path forward would be anything but easy. But it was a start, a chance to break the cycle and find a way to heal. The tension in our home was like a taut string, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. Bryce and I moved through our days with a careful politeness, each of us aware of the fragile peace that hung between us. But beneath the surface, the storm brewed, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it broke. Dolores, despite our confrontation, seemed more determined than ever to maintain her grip on Bryce. Her calls became more frequent, her words laced with subtle barbs that left Bryce looking weary and conflicted. One evening, as Bryce and I sat in the living room, his phone buzzed with another message from Dolores. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Mom wants to have dinner with us again," he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. I could feel the frustration bubbling up inside me, but I forced it down, trying to remain calm. "Bryce, we need to set boundaries. We can't keep doing this." He nodded, but I could see the struggle in his eyes, the pull of loyalty and obligation. "I know, Mallory. It's just she's my mom. And I'm your wife," I said gently, reaching for his hand. "We need to be a team." Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door. We exchanged a puzzled glance. No one was expected. I opened the door to find Gerald standing there, his expression grave. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice quiet but firm. "Of course," I said, stepping aside to let him in. As we sat down, Gerald looked between us, his eyes filled with a mixture of sympathy and resolve. "I think it's time we talked about some things," he began, his tone leaving no room for argument. "What's going on, Dad?" Bryce asked, concern etching his features. Gerald took a deep breath, his gaze steady. "There are things about your mother's past that you both need to know. Things I should have told you long ago." My heart skipped a beat, a sense of foreboding settling in. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Gerald hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Dolores had an affair years ago. It was a difficult time for all of us, and it left scars that never quite healed." Bryce's face paled, shock and disbelief warring in his expression. "An affair? Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I thought I was protecting you," Gerald said, his voice tinged with regret. "But I see now that keeping it hidden only made things worse." The revelation hung in the air, a bombshell that shattered the fragile peace we'd been clinging to. I watched Bryce, his emotions raw and unguarded, as he struggled to process the truth. "I need some air," Bryce said abruptly, standing up and heading for the door. I followed him outside, the cool night air a stark contrast to the turmoil inside. "Bryce," I called softly, reaching for his arm. He stopped, turning to face me, his eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and confusion. I don't know what to do, Mallory. Everything feels like it's falling apart. I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around him. We'll figure it out together, I said, my voice firm despite the uncertainty that loomed over us. As we stood there, I realized that the path ahead was more complicated than I'd ever imagined. The revelation had shifted everything, forcing us to reevaluate what we knew about Dolores and what it meant for our future. And as much as I wanted to find a way forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much deeper struggle. The days that followed Gerald's revelation were a blur of confusion and heartache. Bryce and I drifted through our routines, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us like a thick fog. Dolores's affair was a wound that refused to heal, festering beneath the surface of our lives. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the silence was interrupted by the shrill ring of the phone. I picked it up, my heart sinking as Dolores's voice filled the line. "Mallory, I need to speak with Bryce," she said, her tone clipped and urgent. "He's not here right now," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is there something I can help with?" There was a pause, the line crackling with tension. "I suppose you'll do," she said, her voice laced with disdain. "I know you've been meddling, trying to turn Bryce against me." Her words hit like a slap, sharp and stinging. "Dolores, that's not true. We're just trying to understand." "Understand what?" she snapped, cutting me off. "That you're trying to destroy our family? You've always been a threat." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Dolores, I'm not the enemy here. We just want to move forward." "Forward?" she echoed, her voice rising. "There is no forward with you in the picture. You're tearing us apart." The call ended abruptly, leaving me staring at the receiver in disbelief. Her words echoed in my mind, a relentless reminder of the chasm that had grown between us. Bryce came home later, finding me still sitting in the same spot, the phone cradled in my lap. "Mallory, what's wrong?" he asked, concern etching his features. "Your mother called," I said, my voice hollow. "She thinks I'm trying to destroy your family." Bryce's expression darkened, a mix of frustration and sadness. "She's just lashing out. She doesn't mean it." "But what if she does?" I asked, my voice cracking under the strain. "What if she never accepts us?" He sat down beside me, pulling me into his arms. "We'll get through this, Mal. I promise." But his words felt thin, like a lifeline stretched too far. As much as I wanted to believe him, the reality of our situation loomed large and unyielding. The final blow came a few days later when Bryce received a letter from Mr. Eldridge, the family lawyer. The letter was formal and impersonal, informing Bryce of changes to the family trust, a trust that now excluded him entirely. Bryce read the letter in silence, his face a mask of disbelief. "She's cutting me off," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The room spun around me, the implications of Dolores's actions crashing down like a tidal wave. Our lives, our future, everything we'd built was suddenly in jeopardy. As we sat there, the weight of Dolores's betrayal settling over us, I realized we were at our lowest point. The path forward was obscured by anger and hurt, and the idea of revenge or justice felt distant and hollow. We were left with nothing but each other, and the fragile hope that somehow we'd find a way to rebuild from the ashes. The tension in the room was palpable as Bryce and I stood outside Dolores's front door, the weight of the past weeks pressing heavily on our shoulders. We had come to confront her, to lay everything bare and find some semblance of closure. But as we stood there, the enormity of what we were about to do settled over me like a thick fog. Bryce knocked, the sound echoing through the quiet evening. Dolores opened the door, her expression a mix of surprise and guarded anticipation. "Bryce, Mallory, I wasn't expecting you." "We need to talk, Mom," Bryce said, his voice firm but tinged with the pain of betrayal. Dolores stepped aside, letting us in. The air inside was thick with unspoken words, the silence stretching as we sat down in the living room. I could feel Bryce's tension beside me, his resolve hardening as he prepared to face his mother. "Mom, we know about the affair," Bryce began, his words hanging heavy in the air. "And we know you've cut me out of the trust." Dolores's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and fear, her composure slipping. "I did what I had to do, Bryce. You've let her come between us." "This isn't about Mallory," Bryce shot back, his voice rising. "This is about you and the choices you made. You can't keep punishing us for your past." Dolores stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You don't understand. I was trying to protect you." "Protect me?" Bryce echoed, disbelief coloring his tone. "By lying? By controlling everything." I watched the exchange, my heart pounding as the confrontation unfolded. Dolores's mask of control was slipping, revealing the vulnerability beneath. But instead of backing down, she lashed out, her words sharp and cutting. "You think you know everything, but you don't," she said, her voice cracking. "You don't know what it's like to live with regret." Bryce's expression softened, his anger giving way to something deeper. "Then tell me, Mom. Help me understand." Dolores hesitated, her defenses crumbling as she sank back into her chair. "I've made mistakes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've hurt people I love, but I didn't know how to fix it." The room was silent, the weight of her confession settling over us. It was a moment of unexpected vulnerability, a crack in the armor she'd worn for so long. I reached out, placing a hand on Bryce's arm. "Dolores, we're not here to judge you. We just want to move forward." Dolores looked at us, her eyes filled with a mix of desperation and hope. "I don't know how to fix this," she said, her voice trembling. "Then let's find a way together," Bryce replied, his voice steady and resolute. The conversation shifted, the tension easing as we began to talk, really talk, for the first time. It wasn't easy, and there were no quick fixes, but it was a start. As we sat there, the core themes of revenge and justice gave way to something more profound: understanding and forgiveness. The unexpected twist wasn't in the confrontation itself, but in the realization that healing was possible, that the past didn't have to dictate our future. It was a resolution that tied back to the heart of our journey, a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. And as we left Dolores's house that night, I knew we were finally on a path to healing, together. The weeks that followed our confrontation with Dolores were a quiet whirlwind of change. Slowly, the fractures in our family began to heal, each of us taking tentative steps toward understanding and forgiveness. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the past threatened to overshadow our progress, but we persisted. One afternoon, Bryce and I sat on the porch of our new home, the soft hum of the neighborhood enveloping us. The move had been a fresh start, a chance to redefine what family meant to us. I watched Bryce as he leaned back in his chair, a peacefulness in his expression that I hadn't seen in months. "Do you think we're really moving forward?" I asked, breaking the comfortable silence. He turned to me, a small smile playing on his lips. "I think we are. It's not perfect, but it's a start." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle warmly in my chest. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but we had emerged stronger, our bond more resilient than ever. A few days later, Dolores came over for dinner. It was the first time she'd visited since we moved, and I could see the apprehension in her eyes as she stepped through the door. But there was also a softness, a willingness to try, and that was enough. As we sat around the table, the conversation flowed more easily than I'd anticipated. Dolores shared stories from her past, moments of vulnerability that had once seemed impossible. Bryce listened intently, his hand resting lightly on mine, a silent testament to the strength we'd found in each other. "Mallory, I want to thank you," Dolores said suddenly, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "for giving us all a chance to heal." I met her gaze, feeling the sincerity in her words. "We're all learning, Dolores, and I'm glad we're doing it together." The evening passed with laughter and shared memories, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could begin to mend with time and effort. As Dolores prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door, a lingering question in her eyes. "Will you come to the family gathering next month?" she asked, her tone hopeful. Bryce and I exchanged a glance, the weight of the past and the promise of the future hanging between us. "We'd love to," Bryce replied, his voice warm with acceptance. As Dolores left, I felt a sense of closure, but also the awareness that our journey was ongoing. The themes of revenge and justice had given way to understanding and forgiveness, leaving us with a deeper appreciation for the complexities of family and love. Yet, as I watched Dolores drive away, a subtle twist lingered in my mind, a question about what the future held for us all. It was a reminder that life was unpredictable, and while we had found a path forward, there would always be new challenges to face. But for now, we were content, and as Bryce wrapped his arm around me, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever came next together.
Hello, I'm Tony, and I'm 42 years old. This story began over a decade ago, but it has resurfaced with such audacity from the main person involved that I feel compelled to share it. If you're listening, Sasha, I hope you're feeling as ashamed and embarrassed as you should. Let me take you back to the beginning. Sasha, my sister-in-law, and I were best friends long before I met her brother. Our friendship started in middle school, and we were inseparable from day one. I didn't meet my husband until college, as he was rarely around when I visited Sasha's house. When he went away for college, I still didn't get a chance to meet him. It was a chance encounter at a bar that introduced us. I recognized him from family photos at Sasha's house, and though he didn't know who I was, he approached me. By the end of the night, I revealed that I was his sister's best friend. He was surprised but intrigued, and despite the shock, he pursued me. With Sasha's blessing, we began dating, married 2 years later, and moved in next to Sasha and her husband, Brett. A year into our marriage, Sasha and Brett welcomed a baby girl, Via. I adored her. She was the sweetest child with a radiant smile and laugh. However, Via was born with birth defects that left her partially blind. For her first 5 years, adapting to her surroundings was a challenge. It wasn't due to any lack of intelligence or understanding, but rather because her parents refused to acknowledge her visual impairment. They placed her in potentially dangerous situations, insisting on a normal life for her rather than making accommodations. I wholeheartedly support making our society more accessible for people with disabilities, but Sasha's idea of a normal life didn't involve accessibility. One particular incident stands out. We were at a park, a place usually filled with picnics, playdates, and exercise. Via and I decided to spend some time together, and while Sasha was engrossed in conversation, I noticed Via was missing. Panic set in, and I asked Sasha if she'd seen her. "Sasha, have you seen Via? I'm really worried." "Don't worry about it. How can you be so calm? Via could be in serious danger." "Calm down, Tony, calm down." "How can I calm down? Your daughter is visually impaired. What if she fell and hurt herself badly?" "You have no right to tell me how to parent my child. Via is perfectly fine." "I'm not saying you don't know how to parent. I'm saying I'm the only one who seems to care about her safety. You need to be more responsible. I know what's best for her, and I don't need you to interfere or tell me what I'm doing wrong." "Why are you arguing with me right now? She could be hurt. You need to take this seriously." "I am her mother. Back off and let me handle it my way." I was too panicked and angry to continue the argument. I started retracing our steps to find Via, while Sasha kept calling after me, demanding we finish our conversation. I ignored her, my heart racing too fast to care. Eventually, I found Via, crying and trying to find her way, calling out for her mom and me. Seeing her was a huge relief. I called out to her, and her face lit up with a smile. As she waddled toward me, she got dangerously close to the bicycle path. Suddenly, a group of cyclists zoomed by. My stomach dropped. I rushed to her, but before I could reach her, Via slipped and fell onto the bike path. Cyclists tried to brake or swerve around her. I reached her just in time to pull her away from the oncoming cyclists. I held her tightly as she sensed my panic and started crying. I did my best to calm her and myself. Sasha had witnessed the entire scene. She approached and took Via from my arms with a firm grip. "You shouldn't have interfered," she said sharply. "Via needs to learn to navigate her environment on her own." I was concerned for her safety. "Did you even consider the potential dangers around here?" I retorted. "She's old enough to explore on her own. She doesn't need constant supervision. She's only 4 years old and visually impaired. She could have been seriously hurt." "Oh, come on. It's not that bad. She might have just gotten a few scratches or bruises." "That's beside the point. She needs proper care and guidance." "You're being overly protective. Via can handle herself. Your disregard for her safety is dangerous. One day, it might cause her serious harm. You need to take her well-being more seriously." "Just mind your own business, Tony. Via is my daughter, not yours." "Fine, but remember, you're responsible for her well-being. She deserves better care." Sasha took Via and walked away, leaving me stunned and angry. How could anyone treat their own child like that? I wanted to protect Via and wished Sasha would step up as a parent. I knew Brett was not an option since he was so absent, spending all his time at work. But, somewhat ironically, the universe answered my plea in a way I hadn't expected. After that incident, Sasha cut off most communication. I rarely saw Via, and whenever I tried to visit, Sasha would make excuses and shut the door. Then, a year later, Sasha and Brett showed up at my house with Via in tow. I was taken aback by their appearance and the bags they carried. "Hi, guys, are you going on a trip?" I asked, trying to make sense of the situation. Yes, it's a couple's trip. We were wondering if you and Noah could take care of Via while we're gone," Sasha replied. "Of course, we can look after her, but how long will you be away?" "Forever. We've had enough of Via." "What? She doesn't fit our idea of the perfect child. We can't handle it anymore." "How can you be so cruel and heartless? You can't just abandon your own child. We've made up our minds. Here, we've signed away our parental rights, and these are her adoption papers. Take her. She's too much of a burden. I refuse to let you treat her this way. She's not a burden. Stop being so dramatic. Just take her if you care so much. I will take Via. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You're her parents. Act like it. Before I could say more, Sasha and Brett turned and left, driving off without a second glance. I stood there, shaking, until Via tugged on my arm, asking how long her parents would be gone. Tears streamed down my face as I told her it would be years before she saw them again. Via began to cry loudly, calling out for her parents. I held her close, letting her cry in my arms for as long as she needed. When I finally brought Via inside, she looked up at me with concern and asked if I would also send her away. My heart sank, and I struggled to hold back my tears, but I kept my composure. Via, you're going to stay with me and Uncle Noah from now on. Does that mean my mom will come back? I don't know, sweetheart, I can't promise that. Okay, but you and Uncle Noah are more fun than my parents anyway. Oh, thank you, sweetie, we'll take great care of you, and we'll always be here for you. Can we have more game nights and movie nights? Absolutely, we'll make sure to have lots of fun together. Yay, I love you, Aunt Tony. I love you too, Via, always remember that. That evening, I filled Noah in on everything that had happened. He was furious with his sister and brother-in-law. He tried calling them, but his calls always went to voicemail. As the days went by, we gradually adjusted to our new reality. We were thrilled to have Via with us. Despite the neglect she had endured, she was well-behaved and a joy to watch grow up. Days turned into months, and months into years. Via blossomed into a beautiful young woman. We grew so close that Sasha and Brett almost became a distant memory. Within 6 months of moving in with us, Via stopped calling us Aunt Tony and Uncle Noah. We became her parents in every meaningful way, and our love for her deepened. Though she remained mostly blind, she adapted remarkably well. When she was 12, her doctor informed us of a new medical advancement that could potentially restore Via's vision. We were astonished and asked if it could be fully restored. The doctor explained that while it might not be 100%, there was a possibility of achieving about 85% restoration. We were elated. That night, we sat down with Via to share the news. Via, sweetie, how do you feel about this news? I'm scared, Mom. I don't want to lose what little sight I have, Via said, her voice trembling. It's okay to be scared, I replied, but we'll find the best doctors to help you. Really, Dad? Do you promise it won't make me fully blind? We promise, Noah reassured her. We'll choose the best places with the highest success rates. You'll be safe. Okay, I want to do it, but I'm scared. It's natural to feel scared, I said, but we'll be with you every step of the way. I know, I want to see what my real parents look like. Hearing that Via's first desire after the surgery was to see Noah and me brought tears to our eyes. We felt incredibly blessed to have her in our lives. The surgery was scheduled for the following month, and we spent the time leading up to it enjoying game nights and movie nights to help distract ourselves from the anxiety. When the day of the surgery arrived, it was successful. It took Via 6 months to fully heal, but Noah and I stood by her throughout the recovery. During this period, we grew even closer as a family. The following years were filled with joy. Via regained a significant portion of her sight, and it was heartwarming to watch her marvel at the world around her. One of the most touching moments was when she finally saw Noah's and my faces clearly. She cried and told us how much she loved us. We hugged her tightly and reciprocated her feelings. From then on, Via would take a moment each day to look at us and compliment us, saying it was her way of making up for all those years when she could only receive compliments and never give them. Then, one day, our peaceful life was disrupted. Noah and I had taken the day off because Via was on summer vacation and spending time with her friends. While we were preparing lunch, we heard a loud banging on the door. My heart raced. Noah cautiously opened the door a crack and then quickly shut it, his face pale. What's wrong? I asked. Mom, he said, Sasha's outside. Before I could fully process what was happening, I found myself at the door. I threw it open and saw Sasha standing there, looking contrite. Tony, can I come in? You were never invited back into our lives. What do you want? Please, I'm sorry for abandoning my responsibilities and leaving my burdens at your feet. I was young and didn't know what to do, so I ran. You still haven't changed. I don't know if you have, considering you're here calling the child you abandoned a burden. I just wanted to see my daughter. No drama, I promise. Via is no longer your daughter. You signed over your parental rights to me and Noah. She's still my daughter, no matter what you say. No, she's not. You made that choice. Leave now. We don't need you here. Sasha's face went white, and she stammered, trying to justify her presence. I was about to close the door, but she stopped me and broke down, revealing her true reason for coming. I came to see Via because I need to talk to her about something serious. What could be so serious that you're showing up after 12 years? Brett is very sick and needs stem cells. We want to try every possible DNA match, including Via. I understand, but this is a lot for Via to handle. I'll talk to her and let you know her decision in 3 days. Thank you, and I'm sorry for everything I did in the past. Apologies won't undo the past, but I'll make sure Via hears about your request. I was furious and hurt that Sasha had reached out only because she needed something, not because she cared about Via. I wanted to refuse on Via's behalf, but I knew that wasn't right, so I decided to wait until Via came home to discuss it with her. When Via came home, Noah and I sat her down. What's wrong, guys? You look worried, she asked. Well, your biological mother, Sasha, visited us today, Noah began. Why would she come here? What does she want? Via's concern was evident. She came to talk to you about something serious. Your biological father, Brett, is very sick and needs a stem cell donor. Sasha came to see if you could be a match, I explained. Is Brett okay? Should I do it? Via asked, her voice trembling. We don't know the full extent of his condition, sweetie. It's entirely up to you, and we'll support whatever decision you make, Noah said gently. How long do I have to decide? Via asked. You have 3 days to think about it, I answered. Okay, I'll take some time to think it over, she said, then said good night and retreated to her room. Noah and I were deeply worried. We ate our dinner in silence, leaving some food outside Via's door in case she wanted to eat. That night, as we lay in bed, we talked about our fears. I'm really worried about Via, Noah said. She seems so troubled after hearing about Brett's condition. I know, it's a lot for her to process. I hope she makes the decision that's right for her, I said. Me too. I can't bear to see her go through more pain. We have to be there for her, no matter what she decides. You're right, we'll stand by her, just like we always have. The next 3 days dragged by painfully. Via stayed in her room, the only indication she was still around being the food we left outside her door, which disappeared each day. It hurt to see her struggling, but we knew she needed time and space to think. On the night of the 3rd day, Via came down to join us for dinner. Dear, how are you feeling now? I asked. I'm okay, I just needed time to think. I'm sorry for worrying you, she said. You don't have to apologize. We understand this is a big decision for you, Noah reassured her. That's right, honey, we support whatever you choose, I added. I've made up my mind. I won't be donating anything to Brett, Via said firmly. Are you sure about this? Noah asked. Yes, Dad, I have my reasons, and I want to explain them with Sasha here, she replied. Okay, we'll be here with you when you talk to her. You don't have to do it alone, I said. Thanks, Via said. I must admit, I felt relieved with Via's decision. Her safety and well-being were my top priorities, and I didn't want Sasha or Brett to exploit her. I texted Sasha, asking her to meet us the next afternoon for lunch. The following afternoon, we gathered at the dining table. Sasha arrived looking anxious and avoided making eye contact with Via. Her demeanor annoyed us all. The atmosphere was tense and silent until Via decided to break the ice. Why won't you look at me, Sasha? Via asked, her voice steady. Oh, you know I'm not looking at you, Sasha replied evasively. Mom and Dad helped fix my vision. I can see you now, Via said, her gaze unwavering. They did? Why? Sasha asked, sounding genuinely confused. Because we love her and want her to have the best life possible, I answered. You didn't have to throw it in my face. Do you want to know my decision or not? Via's voice was firm. Yes, I do. What did you decide? Sasha pressed. I've decided not to donate anything to Brett. Why should I help you after you guys left me? Via said, her tone resolute. It's your duty as our daughter, Sasha insisted. No, I'm only Mom and Dad's daughter now. They actually care about me, unlike you, Via declared. I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Watching Via stand up for herself and assert her worth made my heart swell with love. Instead of confronting Via, Sasha turned her frustration toward me. It's all your fault that Via is making this decision. You poisoned her mind against me. That's not true at all. We never spoke ill of you, We only supported Via and let her make her own choices. She's old enough to decide for herself, and we'll stand by her no matter what, I said firmly. You're spoiling her. I'll call CPS and get her taken away from you, Sasha threatened. You haven't cared about me for 12 years, and now you come back only when you need something. You didn't even ask how I was doing. I'm grateful that I got my sight back because I got to see my biological mother for the first and last time, I said, my voice steady. Via then got up from the table and walked into her room. Sasha stood there, stunned. Noah and I calmly asked her to leave. Sasha tried to argue, but Noah's stern presence was enough to convince her to go. After Sasha left, we gave Via some space to cool down. When we finally knocked on her door, she opened it with a bright smile. Don't worry about me, I'm okay, she said, reassuring us. We decided not to press further and suggested a movie night instead. Via eagerly agreed, and we spent the rest of the day together, enjoying fun movies in each other's company. It's been a year since everything happened. Via has healed and grown so much. We haven't brought up the incident, but we know she's okay, and that's what matters most to us. If there's one thing I've learned through this experience, it's that there's nothing more fulfilling than loving and raising your child the right way. No matter what happens, always stand up for yourself and your family. I transitioned from handling complex problems at my old job to working at a candy store with Ben, and the shift was refreshing. Instead of troubleshooting daily crises, I now enjoyed the charm of sweet treats. Ben's family owned the store, and soon, I was managing the finances. The shop was thriving, and on a Monday morning, Ben greeted me with a warm smile. Despite some underlying tension, his smile brightened my day. I mentioned that our sales were up thanks to a new chocolate we introduced, but Ben seemed unsettled. He joked about his mom still believing he was the best at managing the store. Moments later, Linda, Ben's mother, arrived. She complimented Ben but took a subtle jab at me. I kept my composure and simply greeted her. Good morning, Linda. Linda implied that I should leave the business aspects to the experts and stick to supporting Ben with the real work. Before things escalated, Ben stepped in, praising my business acumen and showing his support by putting an arm around me. Linda wasn't fully convinced, but she left, stating that Ben's happiness was what mattered most. Ben quietly apologized for his mother's behavior. I brushed it off, insisting it didn't bother me. We continued to run the shop together, and Sugar Haven became more than just a candy store, it was our special place. However, things soon began to unravel. Deliveries increased, but instead of candy, we received costly items that raised red flags about our finances. One evening, I discovered Ben unboxing a new, expensive phone. When I questioned its necessity given our other needs, he shrugged it off, claiming we deserved nice things too. It wasn't just the phone. Linda also frequently showcased new, pricey clothes, treating the store as her personal runway. Look at this dress, Anna, isn't it lovely? Linda twirled in a floral dress that seemed far beyond our budget. It's nice, I said, striving for indifference, but shouldn't we save for the sign outside? Linda dismissed my concern with a pat on Ben's cheek. Nonsense. The store is doing great. Benjamin, tell her, Linda urged, and Ben, half distracted, agreed with her. Yeah, we're doing fine, Anna, don't worry. But worry was exactly what I did. Every time I reviewed our finances, the numbers didn't add up. I think we should be cautious. I suggested later that week while examining our budget. Perhaps we should set a budget for personal expenses. Ben looked at me as though I'd proposed something outrageous. A budget? Come on, Anna. We're not in dire straits, and you're usually not this stingy. The term, stingy, hurt. I wasn't being stingy, I was being prudent. It's not about being stingy, Ben, it's about being smart. We need to consider the future of Sugar Haven. He didn't seem to grasp my concern, already engrossed in shopping for another item. You worry too much, he said distractedly. It'll all work out. Matters took a turn when Linda decided to bring in extra help. On a Tuesday, our inventory day, I was buried in organizing candy jars when Linda arrived with a young woman who couldn't have been older than 20. Anna, this is Tessa, Linda announced with a hint of triumph. Tessa, dear, this is Anna, my son's assistant. I straightened up and wiped my hands on my apron. Nice to meet you, Tessa. Actually, I'm the co-manager here. Tessa smiled, but there was something off about it. I've heard a lot about you. I'm really excited to be part of the team. I glanced at Linda, whose smug expression suggested she hadn't consulted Ben about this new hire. What exactly will Tessa be assisting with? I asked, trying to keep my tone friendly. Oh, She'll be helping with the business side of things. After all, you can only do so much, Linda said, dismissing my concerns with a glance at my inventory list. I nodded, though I was still puzzled. All right, well, we have a system here, so I'll need to bring her up to speed. It didn't take long to realize that Tessa's approach to helping out involved more observing than actual work, and when I saw the salary Linda had set for her, I was stunned. Ben, can we talk? I cornered him in the office later that day. Sure, what's up? He asked, eyes glued to his computer screen. It's about Tessa. Her salary it's way beyond what we can afford for this role. Ben finally looked up, his brow furrowing. Mom said it was fine. She believes Tessa will make a big impact. I sighed, feeling as though I was talking to a brick wall, but we agreed to discuss new hires together, especially regarding their compensation. He shrugged, that annoying dismissive gesture becoming more frequent. What's done is done. Mom has a good feeling about her. I bit back a retort. Good feelings don't balance books. I left the office feeling like I was the only one seeing the red flags while Ben and his mother blissfully ignored them. I've always been meticulous with numbers, so when I discovered an envelope wedged in the back of a filing cabinet while searching for a misplaced invoice, my initial thought was that it was just another forgotten bill, but as I sifted through the papers, my heart raced, not from excitement but from dread. It was a document listing Sugar Haven as collateral, and the amount was shockingly high for our small shop. Ben, I burst into his cluttered office, clutching the papers. What is this? He looked up, guilt flashing across his face, an unusual sight in recent months. Oh, it's nothing. Just a small loan I took out to cover, store improvements. Store improvements? I asked, incredulous. This amount could renovate the store 5 times over. What did you actually use it for? There was a pause as Ben carefully chose his words. Okay, look, he started. I might have used some of it for the house, the one I've been working on for us. For us? I repeated sharply, my disbelief palpable. Or for your gadgets and other indulgences? He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping back in a way that grated on my nerves. It's not like that, Anna, you don't understand. This is all going to pay off in the end. No, Ben, what I don't understand is taking out a loan against the store without telling me. How could you be so reckless? Before he could respond, Linda burst in, her expression souring as she noticed the papers in my hand. What's all this about? She demanded. I cut Ben off, thrusting the loan documents at Linda. Did you know about this? She barely glanced at the documents before dismissing them with a wave. Of course I did. Ben's just doing what's necessary for our future. And who are you to question him? You're just the help. After all, the words stung, but they also ignited something inside me. Just the help? I said, my voice steady but firm. I've been keeping the store afloat while you two treat it like your personal bank account. What's ungrateful is not recognizing the hard work someone's been putting into this business. What's foolish is risking everything for a house we don't even need. I waited for them to defend themselves, but they just stared at me, caught off guard, clutching the documents. I left the room. The kitchen table, typically reserved for meals, now hosted a somber gathering as if we were about to discuss matters of state instead of candy. Ben cleared his throat, avoiding eye contact. We need to talk about the store's future. I sat down, folding my hands on the table. We already had that discussion when I found these loan documents, I said firmly. We already had that discussion when I found these loan documents. Linda huffed, her arms crossed tightly. We need to be realistic, Anna. The store isn't pulling in enough to cover the debts. We need to find money somewhere. There it was. That really meant me. I kept my voice steady. What do you suggest? Her eyes gleamed with cold calculation. You have that inheritance from your parents. It could cover the debts and get the store back on track. I felt like I was speaking to a stranger, not the woman who was once a part of my family. You want me to use my parents' money, the money they left for my future? Ben finally spoke up. It's not like you're doing anything else with it. That money was meant for my security, I said, disbelief clear in my voice. What about our security? Linda shot back. You're part of this family now, aren't you? I looked between them, my heart sinking. I am, but it seems you only remember that when you need something from me. Ben shifted uncomfortably. It's not like that, but we're drowning here. Anna, so you expect me to just hand over my future just like that? I asked. Linda leaned forward, her tone harsh. If you care about this family, yes. I thought about the sacrifices I had made for the store, the long hours, the sleepless nights. If I invest my inheritance, I want 1/3 of the store. I want to be an official co-owner. The room fell silent. Linda's laughter was harsh and cutting. You, a co-owner? Don't be ridiculous. You're not business material. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. Then find another way to cover your debts, because my inheritance is not your emergency fund. Ben's face was unreadable, but Linda's cheeks were flushed with anger. You'd let this family business go under? I've tried to save it, I said quietly but firmly, but I won't sacrifice my future to keep you warm. I wasn't one for late-night visits to the shop, but something in my gut told me to check on Sugar Haven that evening. The place was dark, as expected, but a faint light glowed from the back office. I pushed open the door, the familiar tinkle of the bell now sounding ominous. The sweet scent of confectionery, which usually comforted me, now felt heavy with the weight of betrayal. As I approached the back, the murmurs from the office grew clearer. Through the partly open door, I saw Ben with his arms around Tessa, the new assistant, who giggled at something he whispered in her ear. I pushed the door open fully, and they sprang apart, their faces morphing from shock to guilt. Anna, Ben stammered, straightening his shirt. What are you? It's not what it looks like, he tried to explain. I crossed my arms, a cold calm settling over me. Really? Because it looks like I just caught my husband with his arms around another woman. Tessa was smoothing her hair back, avoiding eye contact. We were just going over inventory at midnight. With the inventory in your arms? I replied dryly. Ben's eyes were pleading. Anna, please, you're blowing this out of proportion. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty clear. He took a step toward me, but I raised a hand. Save it, Ben. I don't know what's worse, the cheating or the pathetic lies. Tessa spoke up, her voice small and trembling. I'm sorry, Anna, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I looked at her, young, naive, and ensnared in a web spun by a man who couldn't take responsibility for his actions. You should be, and you should also be looking for another job. Ben's protest was immediate. You can't fire her for this. I turned to him, my resolve hardening. I can, and I will, and I'll be looking for a good lawyer in the morning. His face went pale. Anna, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. You've made your choices, now you get to live with them. Without waiting for a response, I walked out, my head held high, the sound of Ben calling after me fading behind me. The morning after the confrontation was bright, a stark contrast to the gloom hanging over our home. I'd spent the night at my rental property, and as I sat at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with a message from Ben. I almost didn't read it, but curiosity got the better of me. The message was a photo of a bank letter addressed to Ben, with the bold words, "Final notice, immediate repayment required," standing out. Below the photo, Ben had typed, "We need to talk, this is serious." I typed back a simple, "On my way," and prepared to face whatever was coming. When I arrived at the confectionery, Ben and Linda were already there, pacing anxiously. Linda spotted me first, her expression darkening. "Decided to show up, did you?" she snapped. I met her gaze steadily. "You wanted to talk?" Ben handed me the letter. "The bank's coming down hard, we could lose everything." I scanned the letter. The numbers didn't surprise me, but they still made my stomach churn. "So what's your plan?" Linda glared at me as if I were the source of their problems. "We wouldn't be in this mess if you'd helped us when we asked." Ignoring her, I turned to Ben. "What are you going to do?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking defeated. "I thought you could pay it off with your inheritance." My laugh was bitter. "I told you I'm not doing that without a stake in the business." Linda stepped forward, her tone sharp. "You're being unreasonable, Anna. This is a family business." I met her challenge with a calm I didn't feel. "And where was this family when your son was squandering money and hiring his friends for fun?" Ben started to respond but fell silent, his gaze dropping to the floor. "You don't get to play the family card only when it suits you." I continued. "We'll figure something else out." Ben muttered. "You'll have to." I agreed. Then, to my surprise, Linda smiled, but it was far from pleasant. "Fine, if you're not going to help, then you're out. We'll manage without you. You're fired." I stared at her, letting the silence stretch before I matched her smile with one of my own. "Okay." Their shock was almost comical. "Just like that?" Ben asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "Just like that," I confirmed, "but I want you to know I have photos of you and Tessa. I've documented all the money you've wasted. If you think you can fire me and sweep this all under the rug, you're mistaken." Linda's smile faltered. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, but I would. And when I leave, I'm taking all my hard work with me. You can explain to the bank why the business is about to collapse without the person who actually kept it running. Months had passed since I last stepped foot in Sugar Haven, and life had settled into a new rhythm. The crisp sound of papers shuffling, the hum of focused conversations, and the satisfaction of resolving crises had replaced the sweet scent of sugar and spice. I was sitting in my new office, a world away from the candy shop's back room, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Claire, a former employee and the only one from Sugar Haven I still kept in touch with. "Hey Claire, what's up?" I answered, a note of caution in my voice. News about Sugar Haven always carried a tinge of the past. "You haven't heard?" Claire's voice was filled with a mix of pity and discomfort. "Heard what?" I asked, bracing myself. "The shop closed down last week. The bank foreclosed on them and the house too." I leaned back in my chair, a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged lifting from my shoulders. "I see. And Ben and his mother?" There was a pause. "They're not doing well. Rumor has it they've moved in with Ben's aunt. No one's seen them much since." I sighed, unsure how to process the news. "Thanks for letting me know, Claire." Before hanging up, Claire added, "Anna, everyone knows you were the heart of that place. It was never the same after you left." A small, sad smile touched my lips. "I appreciate that. And you? Found a new job yet?" "Yeah, I'm working at a bakery downtown. It's not Sugar Haven, but it's a start." "That's great to hear. You always had a talent for baking. I'm sure you'll do well there." We chatted for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. I looked out the window at the bustling street below, reflecting on the past. A knock at my door brought me back to the present. My assistant peeked in. "Your 3 o'clock is here." "Thanks. Send them in," I responded, shaking off the remnants of nostalgia. The clients, a husband and wife team, entered, looking concerned about their own business. I stood to greet them, ready to dive into another challenge. "We've heard great things about you, Anna," the wife said as we settled into our meeting. "They say you're the best crisis manager in town." I smiled, feeling comfortable with the title. "I'll do my best to live up to that reputation. Now, tell me about your business, and let's see how we can turn things around." As they spoke, I listened intently, already formulating strategies in my mind. The meeting extended, their initial anxiety giving way to hopeful smiles as we explored possibilities. They left with renewed purpose, and I turned back to my desk, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. In the end, I realized that sometimes the sweetest outcomes emerge from the bitterest trials, and the future was mine to shape, one careful step at a time.
My brother-in-law, Kevin, dropped a bombshell at dinner, saying, "The truth is, we sold our house." My husband and I were left speechless, but the most shocked person in the room was my mother-in-law. She immediately demanded, "Why would you do that? And why didn't you come to get me?" Visibly upset, she began arguing with Kevin. He raised his hands in a calming gesture, trying to explain. "My name's Sandra, and I work from home alongside my husband, Robert. We loved the flexibility that came with working remotely, taking breaks whenever we needed. But when Robert's mom moved in, things changed. Financially, we were stable, but she just couldn't understand why we weren't leaving the house every day to work. Her constant questions wore me down. No matter how many times we explained that we were working from home, she thought we were just lounging around, not thinking about the future. She often told us she should have gone to live with Kevin instead. Kevin, Robert's brother, had married Carol, a wealthy woman, but deep down, we knew Kevin was too preoccupied with enjoying his wife's money to take care of his mom. Still, she clung to the hope that one day he would come and whisk her away to their mansion. In reality, it was never going to happen. Robert had already promised his mom she could stay with us. Kevin made it clear he wouldn't take her in, leaving us to juggle our remote work life with her constant presence. Despite being labeled unemployed by her because we worked from home, we tolerated it. Then, out of the blue, Kevin called one day. "I'll be coming over this weekend," he said, hanging up before we could ask for details. Robert and I were puzzled, wondering what it meant. My mother-in-law overheard and jumped to conclusions. "Kevin's coming to get me. Help me pack," she exclaimed, practically dragging Robert to her room. He tried reasoning with her, explaining that Kevin hadn't mentioned anything about taking her, but she wouldn't hear it. "He didn't say he was picking you up, Mom," Robert tried to reason. "He doesn't have to say it. I know he's coming for me," she insisted. It baffled us. Since moving in, she'd done no housework and relied on the money we gave her. So why was she so convinced Kevin would take her? Still, we went along with it, helping her pack as we waited for Kevin's arrival. When Kevin and Carol arrived that weekend, their behavior was oddly courteous. My mother-in-law greeted them with a slew of complaints about how poorly she thought we were treating her. "You two aren't mistreating Mom, right?" Kevin asked, giving us a scrutinizing look. "Of course not," Robert replied. "We give her money and let her live comfortably. Sandra takes care of all the housework." Kevin raised an eyebrow. "Mom says otherwise. Maybe you're not even aware of how you've been treating her," he added, fueling her complaints. Robert and I exchanged frustrated glances, but we decided to keep things civil and led everyone to the living room. As soon as we sat down, my mother-in-law ordered, "Don't just sit there, serve them." I raised an eyebrow. "I thought you were going to make the tea, Mom." "Make an old woman work, Kevin? Look at how Sandra treats me," she exclaimed, dramatically wiping at non-existent tears. I was too taken aback to respond, so I begrudgingly made the tea. When I returned, Kevin and Carol had adopted a more serious tone. "We need to talk," Kevin started. "The truth is, we sold our house." The shock on Robert's face mirrored my own, but it was nothing compared to the disbelief in my mother-in-law's eyes. "Why would you do that? And what about picking me up?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kevin sighed, trying to calm her down. "We've fallen into debt and had no choice. We need a place to stay temporarily, just until we get back on our feet." "Debt? What debt?" my mother-in-law pressed. "I invested in a business. It didn't go as planned," Kevin confessed with a nervous chuckle. Robert and I could only sigh. "We just need a place to stay for a little while, please. There's nowhere else for us to go," Kevin added, almost pleading. Feeling conflicted, we reluctantly agreed to let them stay temporarily but made it clear they had to leave within a month. "Got it," Kevin said with a nervous laugh before heading off to prepare for the move. After they left, my mother-in-law sat in silence, her expression unreadable. We assumed she was still processing the news. The next day, Kevin and Carol's belongings arrived, filling up the house quickly. "Where are we going to put all this stuff? We might need to sell some or rent a storage unit," we discussed while unloading their boxes. Then, out of nowhere, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. "I've been thinking, wouldn't it be more secure for the future if Kevin stays here permanently? You two freeloaders could just leave," she said coldly. My husband and I froze, shocked by her bluntness. "I mean, if I really have to, I can tolerate Robert staying, but I don't need a wife who can't even do anything around here. Why don't you just get a divorce? Then Sandra's space could be used for all these packages," she suggested, her eyes gleaming as she glanced at my husband, waiting for his agreement. "What on earth are you talking about?" Robert stammered, clearly astonished by her audacity. Before we could fully process her words, Kevin and Carol arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them enthusiastically, but I was still reeling from what she had said. Despite the tension, Robert tried to keep things civil and asked Kevin to deal with the mountain of boxes cluttering the hallway. "There's more than we expected," Robert noted. "You might have to rent a storage unit or sell some of this stuff." Kevin's face darkened. "Sell them? Are you crazy? These are important things. What if they get stolen from a storage unit, or damaged? Are you going to take responsibility for that?" he snapped. Robert's patience was wearing thin. "This is our house. You're staying here as a favor, so it's only fair you deal with some inconvenience. If you don't like it, find somewhere else to live," he said firmly. Just then, my mother-in-law intervened, raising her voice. "What are you talking about? Didn't I just say if you two aren't happy with Kevin and Carol being here, you can leave? You're freeloaders. You contribute nothing to this household. Kevin's trying to start a business, while all you two do is sit around claiming to work remotely. You're a burden." My husband and I exchanged stunned glances, unable to believe what we were hearing. Kevin and Carol, however, exchanged smirks. "Actually, that's a great idea, Mom," Kevin chimed in. "We don't need the hassle of finding another place. Just sell the house to us, right, Carol?" He turned to his wife, who nodded eagerly. "Exactly," Carol agreed. "It makes perfect sense. We'll take over the house, and you two can just leave. Mom's already on our side, so it's the most practical solution." Robert was about to protest when my mother-in-law cut him off, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "See, Both Kevin and Carol agree. So, Robert, what are you going to do? If you're willing to divorce, you can stay here. Otherwise, Sandra should leave, she said, glaring at me with triumph in her eyes. I prepared to respond, but my husband beat me to it. Why are you saying Sandra has to leave? You just say whatever you want, he snapped, his face flushed with anger. Don't raise your voice like that. It's better without a burden around, isn't it? My mother-in-law shot back. Burden? You don't understand anything. This is Sandra's house. My husband fired back, his frustration evident. At his words, my mother-in-law, Kevin, and Carol all gasped, clearly stunned. My husband pressed on, intensifying the tension. Sandra bought this house for us to live in together. What? That can't be true. Isn't it the husband's job to buy the house? My mother-in-law stammered in disbelief. There's no such rule. Besides, Sandra's been covering all your expenses, your allowance, your living costs, since your pension barely stretches far enough. She took that on willingly because she wanted you to have some financial freedom, Robert explained, his gaze hardening as he looked at his mother. Despite his explanation, my mother-in-law refused to back down. I don't believe any of this. Believe it or not, it's the truth. And even though Sandra's been managing everything so you'd be secure if you ever wanted to leave, you've been bossing her around and making it harder for her to work. You're the problem here. If you don't like Sandra, you can leave, Robert said firmly. We never wanted you to live with us in the first place. You begged us to let you stay, he added, turning his gaze to Kevin and Carol. And we don't mind if you're here temporarily, but you need to be respectful. Kevin and Carol exchanged nervous glances, clearly uncomfortable with Robert's outburst. Kevin awkwardly tried to lighten the mood. Oh, come on, bro, we were just kidding, but wow, you've done well for yourselves. Huh, maybe you could give me some business tips. Right, Carol? Carol nodded, forcing a smile, but my mother-in-law remained defiant. Don't get so high and mighty. You're just a bum, Robert. You should leave, too. Go see what it's like out in the real world, she barked, completely ignoring everything we'd said. Robert and I exchanged a weary look, both exhausted from the constant battle. I finally spoke up. If that's how you feel, we'll pack up and go. But don't come crying to us when you're stuck with the mortgage. If you insist on us leaving, fine. But maintaining this house on just a pension will be impossible. My mother-in-law's face turned beet red. Get out then. I don't need your help, she screamed. Wait, you don't mean that, right? Kevin protested, panic creeping into his voice. Yeah, we're safe with you two here. You don't have to leave, Carol added, trying to smooth things over. But my mother-in-law silenced them with a glare. Kevin, you're going to be a CEO, aren't you? Use my pension, start your company, and show everyone how successful you can be. I don't care what it takes, you'll prove them wrong, she declared with fierce determination. Realizing there was no reasoning with her, Robert and I knew it was time to leave for good. We packed our things, transferred the mortgage to Kevin's name, and walked away, cutting ties with them entirely. Some time passed, and though there was lingering frustration from the ordeal, life became peaceful without my mother-in-law's constant criticisms. We settled into our new apartment and resumed our remote work, grateful for the fresh start. Then, one day, my husband got an unexpected phone call. It was his mother, sobbing. Kevin took all my pension and disappeared. He's been gone for a week, and Carol and I are all alone in the house. We don't know what to do. Please help us, she cried. Robert managed to calm her down and asked for more details. I gave Kevin my entire pension to help with his business, but he gambled it all away. When I confronted him, he just vanished, she wailed in desperation, unable to continue through her sobs. My mother-in-law handed the phone to Carol. Please, could you call us back? We can't keep living like this. Ever since Kevin's startup failed, and he sold the house we were staying in, our parents have completely disowned us. My dad refuses to forgive us for selling that house, and neither of them will answer our calls, Carol pleaded, her voice trembling. My husband, clearly disgusted, muttered, I knew it, under his breath. That's really unfortunate, but don't drag us into this. We warned you when we left that we wouldn't help you. If Kevin's missing, report him to the police. It's none of our concern, he said coldly, before hanging up. I was a bit taken aback by his bluntness, but he simply shrugged and said, They got what was coming to them. I couldn't help but agree. After that, they began calling my husband's cell phone relentlessly. When he finally gave in and answered, Carol would be on the other end, crying about not knowing how to report Kevin as missing. We were both shocked that she didn't know how to handle something so basic, but my husband calmly advised her to contact the police. Even with that advice, Kevin remained missing for weeks, just as we started to believe he might never be found. We received shocking news. Kevin had been arrested for robbing a bank in another state. He'd done it in a desperate attempt to pay off his debts. Apparently, it wasn't even his first offense, and he was likely facing serious prison time. Now, Carol can't return to her parents' home and is still living with my mother-in-law in the house. Whether she plans to divorce Kevin or not is uncertain, but that seems to be the least of her worries. She's registered with a temp agency and is struggling to get through her first ever job, barely scraping by day to day. As for my mother-in-law, after Kevin took all of her pension, she's now saddled with the responsibility of repaying his debts. She's even started working part-time to chip away at what she owes. While my husband and I do feel some sympathy for them, we've made it clear that we have no intention of getting involved or offering help. We've cut off all communication. It seems they're finally facing the harsh realities my mother-in-law was so fond of preaching about. Despite everything that's happened since she first moved in with us, my husband and I are just relieved to have our peaceful life back. Hey, everyone, I'm Jane, a 27-year-old who thought she had life all figured out. Let me take you through my journey, honest and straightforward. It all started when I switched jobs and became an accountant at a new company. That's where I met Mark, the charming sales guy with a knack for making you feel special. Our first encounter was in the break room by the temperamental coffee machine. Hey, you're the new accountant, right? Mark asked, leaning casually against the door frame with a smirk. Guilty as charged. I'm Jane, and you are? I responded, trying to sound nonchalant but clearly intrigued. I'm Mark, head of sales and the office's unofficial coffee machine expert, he said with a wink. We both laughed, and from then on, there was an undeniable spark between us. Fast forward 2 years, and Mark planned the most romantic proposal, a beach getaway, dinner at sunset, and then he got down on one knee. It felt like a scene out of a movie. I said yes, without a second thought. Our wedding was a dream come true, and we started our married life in my grandpa's old house, a place brimming with charm and history that I've always loved. A few weeks into our new life, Mark came up with a big idea. Jane, have you ever thought about taking a break from work? Maybe being a housewife for a while? Mark suggested one evening, his eyes hopeful. I was caught off guard. A housewife? But Mark, I'm passionate about my career, I replied, trying to mask my confusion. I get it, Jane, but work is going well for me. We can afford it. Imagine, no stress, just us, and maybe starting a family soon, he said, reaching for my hand. His enthusiasm was convincing, so despite my reservations, I agreed. Why not shake things up a bit? The first few weeks were thrilling. I finally had time for gardening, reading, and experimenting with new recipes. Mark came home to a clean house and dinner on the table. We spent our evenings making plans and enjoying each other's company. It felt like an extended honeymoon. But as time went on, I began to feel restless. I missed the challenges of my job and the satisfaction of solving complex problems. Even the annoying buzz of my office phone seemed oddly comforting. I brushed these feelings aside, telling myself it was just an adjustment period. Then things started to shift. Mark's compliments about the house and dinner turned into expectations. If dinner was late or the house wasn't perfect, he made comments that stung more than I wanted to admit. I began to feel less like a partner and more like a housekeeper. I reached out to my best friend, Laura, to talk about it. I feel like I'm losing myself, I confided in her. Jane, you're a firecracker. Don't let this housewife role put out your spark, Laura encouraged, her concern evident. She had a point. I've always been proud of my independence, and now I felt like I was losing my way in a role I never envisioned for myself. Just when I thought I had settled into this new routine, Mark dropped a bombshell that turned everything upside down. One evening, he came home looking unusually serious. Jane, we need to talk, he started, not even bothering to take off his coat. What's up? You look like you've seen a ghost, I joked, trying to lighten the mood. It's my parents. Their apartment is being renovated, and they need a place to stay for a couple of weeks, Mark said, avoiding eye contact. A couple of weeks? Well, if it's just for a short while, I suppose it's okay, I agreed reluctantly. Thanks, babe. They'll respect our space, I promise, he assured me, grateful. Fast forward a few days, and Mark's parents, Bob and Linda, arrived. The house quickly turned into chaos: bags, boxes, even furniture. It felt like they brought everything but the kitchen sink. Jane, dear, make some room. We've got a lot of stuff, Linda announced as she barged in with a box that seemed to contain her entire life. Bob followed, struggling with a large armchair. Hope you don't mind us bringing some comforts from home, he grunted as he squeezed it through the door. Our cozy home was suddenly filled with their belongings. It was overwhelming, to say the least, and that was just the beginning. Bob and Linda didn't waste any time making themselves at home. Bob took over the TV, flipping channels as if it were his own. Linda started rearranging my kitchen. Linda, what are you doing? I asked, trying to stay calm. Oh, just organizing things a bit better, dear. You know how it is, she replied without even looking at me. I bit my tongue, reminding myself it was temporary, but inside, I was seething. This was my home, and they were treating it like a vacation spot. Then came the dinner disaster. I had prepared a healthy salad and grilled chicken, my usual fare, but Linda looked at her plate as if I'd served her weeds. What's this, rabbit food? She scoffed, pushing the plate away with a look of disdain. Mom, come on, Jane worked hard on this, Mark interjected, trying to defend me. It's fine, Mark, I can whip up something else, I said, though my frustration was boiling beneath the surface. No, let's just order pizza. I need some real food, Bob announced, already reaching for his phone. That night, as I lay in bed next to Mark, I couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in my own home. Mark was snoring peacefully, oblivious to the turmoil churning inside me. I was handling all the hosting, cooking, and cleaning, yet felt like an unpaid maid in my own house. Bob and Linda had turned my home into their personal playground. Linda began taking over the kitchen as if she were running a military operation. One morning, as I prepared my usual avocado toast, she barged in and made a face. What are you eating, bird food? She sneered, rummaging through the fridge. It's avocado toast, Linda. It's healthy, I replied, trying to stay calm. Healthy, schmelthy. You need some real food, girl. Here, let me make you some eggs and bacon, she said, pushing me aside. I stood there fuming as she took over my breakfast, clearly disrespecting both my choices and my space. Then there was Bob. He had claimed our living room as his personal lounge. One evening, I wanted to watch my favorite show, but Bob was sprawled on the couch, watching a loud action movie. Bob, do you mind if I watch my show? It's the season finale tonight, I asked, holding the remote. No can do, Jane. I'm watching this. Find something else to do, he replied without even looking at me. I couldn't believe it. I felt like a stranger in my own living room and stormed off. But the real kicker came a few days later. I found Linda rummaging through my closet. My closet? Linda, that's my personal space, I yelled, finally losing my temper. Oh, relax, Jane. I'm just making room for our things. You've got too much junk here anyway, she said dismissively, tossing my clothes aside. That's when Mark walked in. What's all the yelling about? He asked, looking concerned. Your mother is going through my things. That's what's wrong, I snapped. Mom, maybe you should ask Jane before moving her stuff, Mark said, but his tone was half-hearted. Fine. I was just trying to help, Linda huffed, leaving the room. Mark turned to me. Jane, can't you just let it go? They're just trying to fit in. They're taking over. Mark, this is our home, not theirs, I said, my voice rising with frustration. Mark sighed. Just bear with it a bit longer, okay? In that moment, I felt completely alone. My home no longer felt like mine, and it seemed like Mark was more aligned with his parents than with me. The situation was already tense, but what happened next really pushed me to my breaking point. One day, I realized my bank card was missing. I went into full panic mode, tearing the house apart in search of it. To my shock, I found it in the most unexpected place, Linda's purse. I confronted her immediately. Linda, why is my bank card in your purse? I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, I needed to buy a few things and didn't have any cash on me. She shrugged nonchalantly. I didn't think it would be a big deal, she added, as if that made it okay. A big deal? You took my card without asking. That's theft. I was fuming. Just then, Mark walked in. What's going on here? He asked, glancing between me and his mother. Your mom used my bank card without my permission, I said, feeling a mix of frustration and helplessness. I held up the card and explained the situation. Mark turned to Linda. Mom, you should have asked before using Jane's card, he said, clearly irritated. Linda rolled her eyes. I only needed a few groceries. It's not like I bought a diamond necklace. I could hardly believe my ears. It's my money, Linda. You can't just take my things without asking. That's when Mark dropped a bombshell. Jane, let's not make a big deal out of this. You're living off my money anyway, so what's the harm if my mom uses it? I was stunned. His words felt like a slap in the face. Your money? This is our money, Mark, and our marriage. He shrugged dismissively. It's not a big deal. She'll pay you back. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. My husband was siding with his mother over something so serious. As the weeks passed, the tension in the house grew unbearable. I decided it was time to address the situation directly. So, when are you two planning to move back to your apartment? I asked Bob and Linda one evening during dinner. They just laughed. Move back? Why would we do that? Linda said, exchanging a look with Mark. Yeah, we've decided to stay here. It's much nicer, and Mark doesn't want to waste money on rent for us, Bob added. I turned to Mark, searching for an explanation. He avoided my gaze. Yeah, Jane, it doesn't make sense to rent a place when we have space here, he said. I sat there, stunned. My home, my sanctuary, was being overrun. My husband, whom I thought was my partner, was now telling me his parents were staying indefinitely. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. One day, I went for a jog to clear my head, but luck wasn't on my side. I tripped and fell, and the pain was immediate. I knew I had broken my leg. Hopping back home was a struggle. When I finally arrived, I found Mark and his parents in the living room. Mark, I think I broke my leg. I need to go to the hospital, I said, trying to keep the pain from showing in my voice. Mark looked up, clearly irritated. What now, Jane? Can't you see we're busy here? Linda added. Oh, stop being dramatic. It's probably just a sprain. No, it really hurts. I need help, I insisted, feeling dizzy from the pain. Bob scoffed. At your age, you shouldn't be running around like a teenager. Serves you right. I couldn't believe their responses. I'm in pain here. Can't any of you see that? Mark finally stood up, his expression more annoyed than concerned. Fine, I'll take you, but this better not be an excuse to avoid housework. At the hospital, it was confirmed, I had a broken leg. The next few weeks were hell. I was stuck at home on crutches, barely able to move. You'd think my husband and his parents would help, but no, they acted as if nothing had changed. I was still expected to cook and clean. One day, I was struggling to make lunch on my crutches when Linda walked in and saw me struggling. Can't you do that any faster? We're hungry, she said, showing no sign of sympathy. I'm doing the best I can with one leg, I snapped, my frustration boiling over. Well, it's not good enough. You're being incredibly lazy, Linda snapped. Just then, Mark walked in. What's going on here? He asked, glancing from me to his mother. Your wife is taking forever to make lunch. It's like she's using her injury as an excuse, Linda complained. Mark sighed in frustration. Jane, can't you try a bit harder? We're all hungry here. I was stunned. Try harder. I'm on crutches. Mark, what do you expect me to do? He shrugged and walked out of the kitchen with his mom, leaving me seething and in pain. The situation took another turn for the worse soon after. A few weeks following my injury, Linda and Bob announced they were hosting Thanksgiving at our house and inviting their relatives over. The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Thanksgiving at our house? I asked incredulously. How am I supposed to manage that with my leg like this? Linda waved her hand dismissively. Oh, you won't have to do much. Just stay out of the way and let us handle it, she said. I was furious. This is my house, Linda. You can't just invite people over without consulting me first. Mark stepped in. Jane, it's just a family gathering. Let's not make a big deal out of it. A big deal. Mark, I can barely walk. And now your parents are turning our home into a party venue, I said, my voice rising. Bob added, we thought it would be nice to have a family gathering here. After all, we're all living under the same roof now. Then Linda dropped another bombshell. Actually, Jane, we were thinking it might be best if you stayed somewhere else for a couple of weeks. With your leg and all, you'd just be in the way. I stared at her, shocked. Stay somewhere else? In my own house? Yes, dear. Just for a couple of weeks. It's for the best, Linda said, as if she were doing me a favor. My blood began to boil. You want me to leave my house so you can host a party? That's outrageous. Mark tried to sound reasonable. Jane, it's just for a short while. It'll be easier for everyone. Easier for everyone? This is my home. Mark, I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice trembling with anger. Bob shrugged. We thought you'd appreciate not having to deal with the holiday stress. That was the last straw. Get out, both of you. Get out of my house now, I yelled, feeling a surge of rage and disbelief. Mark's face turned red. Jane, you're being unreasonable. They're my parents. You can't just kick them out. Unreasonable? They're taking over my home. And you're letting them. I practically screamed. Mark's expression hardened. If you can't respect my parents, maybe we shouldn't be together. Is that what you want? A divorce? I glared at him, adrenaline coursing through me. Without a word, I went to my desk drawer and pulled out a set of papers I had prepared just in case things went south. What's this? Mark asked, his voice wavering as he took the papers from my hand. Divorce papers. I've had them ready for a while, I said, my voice firm. Mark stared at the papers, then back at me, clearly stunned. You're serious? You'd really go through with this? Yes, I am. I refuse to be mistreated in my own home. Not by you. Not by anyone, I said, feeling a strange sense of empowerment amid the chaos. Linda and Bob stood there, speechless. Mark looked as if he'd been punched in the gut. The room was thick with tension. Make your choice, Mark. Your parents or our marriage, I said, holding my ground. Mark's laugh was cold and hard. Fine, he said, and to my surprise, he signed the papers right then and there. You'll regret this, Jane. You can't even support yourself without me, he said with a sneer. I watched him leave, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over me. I'll manage, I said softly, though my voice was barely a whisper. Mark shrugged. You're on your own then. And he and his parents gathered their things and left. Just like that, my marriage was over. As the door closed behind them, I felt a strange sense of peace. Alone, but it was a better alternative to the constant tension and disrespect. The first thing I did was change the locks, securing my personal fortress. Thanksgiving came and went faster than I expected. I was still adjusting to my new reality, finding solace in the quiet of my home. Then, unexpectedly, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Mark, his parents, and a bunch of their relatives standing there, ready to celebrate. What are you doing here? I asked, astonished. We're here for Thanksgiving, Jane. Did you really think we weren't coming? Mark said with a smug grin. I couldn't believe their audacity. You're not welcome here anymore, Mark. This is my house, and you're no longer part of my family, not after what you did. Linda interjected. Oh, come on, Jane, don't be so petty. Let's just have a nice dinner. I stood my ground. No, you need to leave now. Mark laughed. You can't kick us out. This was our family home. Not anymore. I changed the locks. Mark, you forfeited any right to this house when you signed those papers, I said, feeling a surge of empowerment. There was a tense silence. Mark's face flushed with anger. Fine, have it your way, he said, and they all turned and left. After the Thanksgiving ordeal, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. A few weeks after Mark and his family left for good, I was sitting in my quiet, peaceful living room when my best friend Laura dropped by. Hey, Jane, how are you holding up? Laura asked, her eyes scanning the room. Better than I expected, Actually, I replied, offering her a smile. Laura sat down, observing me closely. You seem different, stronger somehow. I chuckled. Yeah, I guess shedding dead weight does that. We both laughed, and in that moment, I felt lighter than I had in months. But seriously, what's next for you, Jane? Laura asked, her tone becoming more serious. I took a deep breath. I'm going back to work. I've started looking for accounting jobs. It's a bit scary, but it's time to get back on my feet. Laura nodded. That's the spirit. You were always the smartest one at the office. They'll be lucky to have you back. Her words meant a lot and gave me the boost I needed. I was ready to face the world again on my own terms. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of job interviews and getting my life back on track. I landed a great position at a local firm, and for the first time in a long while, I was excited about the future. My home was mine again. My life was mine again. I had faced the worst and come out stronger. Hi, I'm Laura, a 35-year-old single mom trying to make the best of this chaotic world. It's just me, my amazing 12-year-old daughter Emily, and our snug little home in the suburbs. It might not be grand, but it's ours. I work tirelessly as a nurse, taking on long shifts to ensure we have what we need. Emily is a real gem, sharp as a tack with a boundless creative spirit. Her curly hair, which seems to have a life of its own, is her signature. She adores using it as a canvas for her self-expression. Then there's Gertrude, my ex-mother-in-law, who's a constant source of stress. At 68, she's a no-nonsense widow who lives too close for comfort. While I'm grateful for her help with Emily after school, her incessant criticisms drive me crazy. Laura, dear, don't you think Emily's hair is a bit unruly? Her voice always seems to come at the worst times. I take a deep breath and reply, it's just hair, Gertrude. She likes it like that. In my day, we knew how to present ourselves properly, she says with a huff. I remind myself to keep calm, knowing I need the help. Thankfully, there's Sarah, my best friend and fellow nurse, who's my rock. She's always there to listen or lend a hand when Gertrude's comments become unbearable. Girl, I don't know how you put up with that old bat, Sarah says one day over coffee. You've got the patience of a saint. I chuckle. Believe me, it's wearing thin. Then there's Michael, my neighbor. He's always offering to help with odd jobs around the house. I've noticed the way he looks at me, but after everything with Emily's dad, I'm not rushing into dating again. Hey, Laura, need a hand with those boxes? Michael calls out as I struggle in the driveway. Thanks, Michael. You're a lifesaver, I say, trying not to be distracted by how his shirt fits him as he lifts a heavy box. Life has its bright spots, good neighbors, and helpful friends. The real challenge is balancing my parenting with Gertrude's constant interference. During one dinner, she scolds Emily, sit up straight, a lady doesn't slouch. I see Emily's shoulders slump further. Mom, do I have to listen to her? Just try your best, sweetie, I reply, shooting Gertrude a warning glance. We clearly have different views on what's important. Different ideas indeed, Gertrude mutters. If you'd listen to me, Laura, that child wouldn't be so unruly. I clench my fists under the table. Emily isn't unruly. She's being herself, and I won't suppress that. Mark my words, Laura. Without proper discipline, she'll end up in trouble. As I watch Emily retreat to her room, her wild curls bouncing with each step, I wonder how long I can maintain this delicate balance. Something's got to give, and I have a feeling it's not going to be pretty when it does. I was beyond exhausted after that extra shift at the hospital. All I wanted was to collapse into bed and hold my precious daughter, but as soon as I walked through the door, a deep sense of dread settled over me. Emily, sweetie, I'm home, I called out, but the silence that greeted me was unsettling. I found her curled up in bed, sobbing uncontrollably. My heart dropped when I saw what had been done. Her once beautiful curls were gone. Her head was shaved clean. Mom, Emily cried, throwing herself into my arms. Grandma did this while I was sleeping. I held her close, struggling to keep my own emotions in check. Shh. It's okay. We'll fix this. But inside, I was seething with fury. How could Gertrude do this to my child? I stormed into the living room where Gertrude sat as if nothing had happened. What did you do? I yelled. Gertrude remained calm, almost indifferent. I did what needed to be done. That child was becoming far too vain and disobedient. Vain, disobedient? She's 12 years old. Precisely. And it's high time she learned some discipline. In my day. This isn't your day. I cut her off. This is assault. I'm calling the police. Gertrude scoffed, unbothered. Don't be dramatic. Laura, I've put up with your lax parenting long enough. Someone had to intervene before Emily became a delinquent like her father. That was the last straw. Get out of my house. Now. Gertrude sneered. Gladly. Mark my words. You'll regret not heeding my advice. That girl needs a firm hand. As she gathered her things, the weight of what had happened crashed down on me. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. A knock on the door pulled me from my despair. It was Michael, looking concerned. Laura, is everything okay? I heard shouting. One look at my face told him it wasn't. What happened? He asked softly, his concern evident. I couldn't speak. I just pointed toward Emily's room. Michael's eyes widened in shock when he saw her. Oh my God, who did this? Gertrude, I managed to choke out, my voice shaking with anger. Michael's expression hardened. That's it, I'm calling the police. No, Emily cried, her voice breaking. I don't want anyone to see me like this. I hugged her tighter, trying to soothe her. It's okay, sweetheart, we don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. Michael knelt beside us, his expression gentle. Is there anything I can do? Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Sarah. Laura, what's going on? I got your missed call, and you sounded upset in the voicemail. Through my sobs, I tried to explain. That terrible woman. Sarah interrupted. I'm coming over right now. Within minutes, she arrived with bags full of hats, scarves, and photos of cute pixie cuts. We're going to get through this, she said, determined. Emily managed a weak smile as Sarah worked to salvage what was left of her hair. While Sarah was busy, I filled Michael in on the full story with Gertrude. I can't believe I let that woman near Emily, I said, my self-loathing evident. Michael squeezed my hand. This isn't your fault, Laura. You were just trying to provide for your daughter. He's right, Sarah added. The only person to blame here is Gertrude. I nodded, but guilt still weighed heavily on me. How had I been so blind? As the night went on, Emily eventually fell into an exhausted sleep. Sarah and Michael insisted on staying, camping out in the living room, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. I knew I had to find a way to protect Emily from any more harm and make things right. I vowed that Gertrude would face the consequences for what she'd done to my daughter. Emily deserved nothing less. The following days blurred into a mix of tears, anger, and sleepless nights. Emily refused to leave her room, let alone go to school, so I called in sick, knowing she needed me more than ever. Sweetie, you can't stay hidden forever, I said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. I look like a freak, Mom, Emily sobbed. Everyone's going to laugh at me. My heart shattered for her. No, honey, you're beautiful inside and out. We'll get through this together. Our first stop was the police station, but it was a disappointment. I'm sorry, ma'am, but since there was no physical harm, this is considered a civil matter, the officer said, his disinterest evident. No physical harm? I snapped. Look at my daughter. But the rules were clear. Our next step was to consult a lawyer. We can definitely pursue charges for emotional abuse and sue for damages, the lawyer explained, but it won't be straightforward. I didn't care. I was determined to make Gertrude pay. Sarah was a lifesaver through the whole ordeal. She helped me document everything, photos, timelines, and more. We're going to make sure that old witch gets what she deserves, Sarah vowed as we worked. Meanwhile, Michael was working his own connections. I have a friend who specializes in family law, he said. He's willing to take your case pro bono. I was grateful beyond words, but there was no time for gratitude. Things were about to get even more complicated. It began with whispers at the grocery store, sideways glances from neighbors, and then came the calls from distant relatives. Laura, is it true you've been neglecting Emily? My cousin asked. It dawned on me that Gertrude was retaliating. She was spreading lies, trying to paint me as an unfit mother. I raged to Sarah and Michael. She's trying to turn everyone against me. But Gertrude had underestimated me. I began investigating, reaching out to old babysitters, family friends, anyone who had interacted with her and Emily. The stories I uncovered were chilling. Grandma said if I told you, she'd send me away to boarding school, Emily revealed one night, tears streaming down her face. She used to lock me in the closet when I misbehaved. My heart ached with both fury and guilt. How could I have missed this? It's not your fault, I reassured her, but I promise you, Grandma will never hurt you again. With Sarah and Michael's help, we devised a plan. We installed hidden cameras around the house and coached Emily on how to safely gather evidence if Gertrude tried to contact her. We were prepared for the fight ahead, determined to protect Emily and hold Gertrude accountable for her actions. Remember, kiddo, Michael said, showing Emily how to use the voice recorder on her phone. If Grandma calls or shows up, hit this button right away. Emily nodded, her face serious. I won't let you down, Mom. You could never let me down, baby, I said, pulling her into a tight hug. We're in this together. As we wrapped up our preparations, a steely resolve took hold of me. Gertrude thought she could intimidate and manipulate her way to victory, but she had no idea what was coming. This mama bear was ready to fight, and I wasn't about to back down. All right, team, I said, glancing at Sarah and Michael. Let's take this witch down. The trap was set. Now we just had to wait for Gertrude to make her move. When she did, we'd be ready. The day of the trial arrived, and my nerves were on edge. Emily squeezed my hand as we walked into the courtroom. You got this, Mom, she whispered. Our lawyer presented the extensive evidence we had gathered. The hidden camera footage was damning, showing Gertrude storming into our home and hurling threats at Emily. You ungrateful little brat, Gertrude's voice rang out in the courtroom. I'll teach you to disobey me. The judge's expression grew darker with each piece of evidence. One by one, witnesses took the stand, former babysitters, family friends, even Emily's old piano teacher. They all recounted stories of Gertrude's cruelty. She threatened to fire me if I didn't make Emily practice for 3 hours a day. The piano teacher testified, but the most powerful moment was Emily's own testimony. My brave girl took the stand, her voice trembling but resolute. Gertrude said if I ever told Mom what she did, she'd make sure I was sent away. Emily said, her eyes brimming with tears. I struggled to hold back my own. How had I not seen this sooner? Gertrude's lawyer tried to portray her as a concerned grandmother, but the damage was done. The truth was laid bare. When the judge announced his verdict, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This court grants a permanent restraining order against the defendant, he declared. Additionally, significant damages are awarded for the plaintiff's therapy and emotional distress. With Gertrude out of our lives for good, she approached us outside the courtroom, tears streaming down her face. Laura, Emily, I'm so sorry, she began. I cut her off, my voice icy. Save it, Gertrude, you're dead to us. As we walked away, a heavy weight seemed to lift off my shoulders. The following months were challenging, but we faced them together. Emily started therapy and slowly began to emerge from her shell. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table with Sarah and Michael, Emily made a heartfelt announcement. I want to donate the money from the lawsuit, she said, her voice steady, to help other kids like me. I was overwhelmed with pride. As for Michael and me, well, let's just say he became an integral part of our lives. His unwavering support through it all meant the world to us. The real turning point came about 6 months after the trial. Emily and I were at the hair salon, and for the first time since the incident, she was genuinely excited about her hair. What do you think about purple streaks, Mom? She asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I couldn't help but smile. I think purple streaks sound fantastic, sweetie. As the stylist worked her magic, I watched Emily's reflection in the mirror. For the first time in months, she was truly smiling, her joy radiating in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. You know what, Mom? She said, her voice brimming with newfound confidence. I think we're going to be okay. I squeezed her hand gently. Yeah, sweetheart, we're going to be just fine. Seeing my daughter's bold new hairstyle, a symbol of her resilience and our journey, made me realize how far we had come. Gertrude had tried to break us, but instead, she had only made us stronger. As we left the salon with our heads held high, I understood an important lesson. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about living well on your own terms. And that's exactly what we were doing. When my husband and I arrived at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law greeted us with a smile, but her warmth was reserved only for my husband. As I attempted to enter, she shot me a cold glare and said, "You're not needed here." Before slamming the door shut, I was taken aback and gently opened the door again, only to be met with a furious stare. "I heard about it. Your parents are in debt, aren't they? We don't need a wife like that," she said, before slamming the door once more. Stunned and holding my bags, I could hear my husband and mother-in-law laughing and enjoying themselves inside. Realizing I didn't have to tolerate this treatment, I decided to leave. My name is Nancy, and I'm a 32-year-old doctor working at the hospital founded by my parents. I met my husband, John, when he was admitted to our hospital following an injury. He was charming, friendly, and a great conversationalist. Although he's 5 years younger than me, he appeared mature and reliable. We married after a year of dating, and he is now a vice president at his father's company, where my mother-in-law also worked. His parents were overjoyed with our marriage. "Your parents run a prestigious hospital, and now a doctor is becoming our son's wife. It's like a dream. We're so happy to have you, Nancy," my mother-in-law used to say. During Christmas and other holidays, we would visit my in-laws' house. They always welcomed us warmly, and I would bring delicious food and drinks as gifts for their New Year's celebrations. Despite my offers to help with the cooking, my mother-in-law would always decline, saying, "Nancy, you work hard as a doctor. Just relax. Your family doesn't need you to do anything." My husband would agree, and I looked forward to these visits. But today was different. My mother-in-law's gaze was icy and hostile, a stark contrast to the warmth I had always known from her. Back at my parents' house, I had never encountered such hostility. I have a younger brother who is also a doctor, and we both work at our family's hospital. Recently, my father had called me to discuss his health, but there was no mention of any financial troubles. As I drove home, I recalled a conversation I had with my husband a week ago. Despite our busy schedules, we had come home at the same time. "My dad's retiring from being a doctor," he said. "His eyesight isn't what it used to be, especially for surgery, so they've decided to close the hospital." I told him. My husband looked shocked and responded, "What? The hospital's closing? Do they have debts or something?" I'm not sure about debts, but they're planning to sell the hospital property, so I won't be working there anymore. I'll be taking a break for a while, I explained, but just as I was about to elaborate, I received an emergency call from the hospital and had to leave immediately. "We'll continue this conversation later," I said, but there was barely any time for that. My husband, claiming he was busy at work, came home late, and with my night shifts, we barely spoke. I suspected he might have exaggerated our conversation, assuming my parents' hospital closure was due to debts and that I was somehow involved in handling them. He probably shared this with his parents, but the cold treatment from my mother-in-law was still shocking. Lost in these thoughts, I was driving home when I heard a phone ringing from my bag, locked out by my mother-in-law. I had driven off with my husband's belongings still in the car, including his phone, which was ringing non-stop. I had never looked at his phone before, but thinking it might be important, I decided to check. I pulled over, took out his phone, and tried a few passwords. Knowing my husband's aversion to complexity, I figured it wouldn't be too difficult. As expected, his birthday unlocked the phone. The caller was a woman named Susan, a name I didn't recognize. Looking through the call history, I found numerous exchanges with Susan. The messages were disturbing. "I want to see you soon. I wish I could be with you forever. I'll be with my wife during the New Year holidays, but I'll miss you. Once I get the money, I plan to leave her. That makes me happy. I love you the most." It became clear that my husband was cheating on me. I had always considered my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law to be kind-hearted people. Alone at home, I couldn't shake the shock of what I had discovered. I went into his study to look for more evidence. Opening a drawer, I found photos of him with an unfamiliar woman, apparently from a trip, along with hotel receipts and other incriminating items. Unable to process everything, I decided to visit my parents' house. When I rang the doorbell, my mother opened it, looking surprised. "Why are you here so late? You look pale. Are you okay?" Seeing her concerned face, I broke down in tears. She noticed my distress and wrapped me in a blanket. My father, sensing something was wrong, asked, "What happened?" I told them about the unfair treatment from my in-laws. My mother was shocked. And my father was furious. It's terrible, he said. It turned out that my husband's family business had been struggling, and they had frequently sought financial help from my father, which he provided, thinking it was for me. Maybe you should play along for a while and see their true colors, my father suggested. It seemed like a plan worth considering. The next day, I returned to my in-laws' house and shouted at the entrance, "I'm sorry for being an immature wife. Please let me in." I brought gourmet ingredients and fine wine as gifts. Reluctantly, I was allowed inside. My mother-in-law, eyeing the luxurious gifts with visible greed, welcomed me with a smile. Meanwhile, my father-in-law and husband looked at me with cold, disapproving stares. "We only treated you well because we thought you came from a prestigious family," my mother-in-law said. "Now that we know your family's hospital is struggling with debt, you're just a hard-working wife." "Understood," I replied. From that moment, the harassment intensified. "Get to cooking," she ordered, shoving me toward the kitchen. Using the ingredients I had brought, I prepared a variety of dishes and served them. My father-in-law, mother-in-law, and husband dug in eagerly. "Hey, we're out of wine. Bring the next bottle," they complained. "Is this all you cooked? You might be a smart doctor, but you're a terrible housewife." Despite their complaints, they finished every dish. When I tried to eat, my mother-in-law slapped my hand, causing my fork to clatter to the floor. "What do you think you're doing? You're not eating with us. Housekeepers eat leftovers in the kitchen." "So, I'm a housekeeper now?" I asked, bewildered. "How dare you talk back, especially with all your family's debt," she retorted. "John, do you feel the same way? I never liked your arrogant attitude." "Nancy," my husband said, his voice dripping with disdain, "I put up with it because I thought your family was wealthy. Listen to me, Mom, I'll keep her around as a housekeeper." Hearing my husband's true feelings was a shock. I had hoped he was merely going along with his parents, but it became clear that he had married me for my family's perceived wealth and had been pretending all along. His current behavior was his true nature. I found myself relegated to eating leftovers in the cold kitchen, surrounded by a mountain of dirty dishes. "Save water and wash with cold," they demanded. Washing dishes in icy water during the freezing winter was excruciating. The cold made my whole body tremble. For sleep, my mother-in-law pointed me toward a shed with no heating or bed. "Where is the bed?" I asked, shivering. "Why would you expect a bed? There are old towels and cardboard in the shed. Make do," she replied. This confirmed their true nature. Thankfully, I had recorded their abusive comments. I had no more reason to stay in that house. That night, in the freezing shed, my anger toward my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and husband kept me warm. I vowed never to forgive them. Late that night, after they had drunkenly passed out, I drove back to my parents' house. After a restful sleep, I began packing the next morning when suddenly, the door burst open. My mother-in-law and husband stormed in. "You think you can just leave without making breakfast? What's the meaning of abandoning your husband?" they demanded, their contemptuous looks frightening. It seemed my father-in-law was at work, but my husband and mother-in-law had come to berate me further. "I am done with both of you," I said firmly. "You dare talk back to your mother-in-law and husband? You're even worse than I thought. We can divorce if you want, but if you initiate it, you'll have to pay compensation. Maybe you can sell the hospital's land. It should fetch a good price. We'll take that," my husband sneered. "That's a good idea," I said sarcastically. My husband smirked, believing he had the upper hand, and then threw a paper at me. It was a pre-filled divorce application. "If you don't do as I say, I'll use this," he threatened. "Good. This clears things up for me. You thought I'd beg you to stay? You think a bankrupt hospital means I have no choice but to cling to you, right?" I said. He was completely mistaken. "Actually, it's true my father retired and closed the current hospital, but we're relocating to a new facility near the train station. My brother and I will work there, with me as the director. Far from being in debt, we have more than enough assets." Upon hearing this, my husband and mother-in-law turned pale. "That's a lie, right? You deceived me," my husband stammered. I tried to explain, but they were too quick to jump to conclusions. "So your family is still wealthy then?" my mother-in-law asked, panic evident in her voice. "Can we forget everything that happened yesterday and today? We've always had good relations, right?" Her plea was absurd after all the insults and mistreatment. I'm shocked that you could spew such terrible abuse and now expect me to forget it. Remember, I'm just the housekeeper, right? I replied, my voice dripping with disdain. No, that was a misunderstanding. I'm sorry, please, let it go. My mother-in-law begged, her desperation palpable. It's too late, I know your true feelings. By the way, my father will be reclaiming the $100,000 he loaned to your company, I added, watching as panic spread across their faces. What? How did you know about that? We don't have that money, my husband stammered, realizing the gravity of his mistake. Nancy, I'm sorry, I should have defended you from Mom. I promise to protect you from now on, he said, attempting to salvage the situation. You mean protect Susan, right? I asked, raising an eyebrow. How did you know about Susan? He asked, his eyes widening. You were cheating while pretending to work late. I have all the evidence, I said, showing him the photos and email exchanges on my phone. His face went pale as he looked at the evidence, sweat pouring down his face. You'll be the one paying compensation. Susan was just a fling I met at a bar. I'll break up with her. Please forgive me, he pleaded, his voice wavering as he drooled onto the floor, looking pitiful. That's not all. I showed him a photo of a life insurance policy taken out on me and a detailed pamphlet about car maintenance with a section marked for tampering with car brakes. You not only wanted my family's money but also my life. I've consulted the police, so you can't harm me anymore. My company's in trouble. I need the money. Please help me, he begged, desperation in his voice. Don't joke. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. I never want to see your face again. As he lunged at me, my father and brother emerged from the back room, grabbing his arm and restraining him. My husband, pinned to the ground, cried while my mother-in-law stood there, stunned. The house was purchased under my name, and I planned to sell it. My brother, dealing with the reluctant occupants, ensured that my husband and mother-in-law were sent away. After the divorce, I received compensation from both my husband and the woman he had cheated with. Despite his constant begging to reconcile, I threatened to involve the police if he didn't stop, which finally made him cease his harassment. Through a lawyer, I successfully reclaimed the $100,000 my father had lent to my father-in-law's company. The business, already struggling, eventually went bankrupt under a mountain of debt. My father-in-law, mother-in-law, and husband now live in a small, outdated apartment, juggling multiple part-time jobs but still struggling to manage their debts. Meanwhile, I've moved on to a more fulfilling chapter of my life. I work as the director of a newly built hospital, alongside my brother, where we are dedicated to treating those in need. Each day is rewarding as we make a difference in people's lives. I've bought a comfortable apartment near the hospital, and I'm thoroughly enjoying my new independence and the satisfaction of living life on my own terms. Hi, I'm Laura. Let me take you on a journey that transformed my life. In a seemingly perfect suburban neighborhood, my life was a complex tapestry woven with threads of hope and despair. On one sunny afternoon, Michael and I sat in our cozy living room, the only sound being the ticking of the clock. Why don't we try another doctor, Laura? There has to be someone who can help, Michael suggested, his voice filled with optimism. I sighed, feeling the weight of years of unsuccessful treatments. I don't know, Michael. It feels like we've seen every specialist in the state. He took my hand, his eyes sincere. We can't give up. We're in this together, remember? His unwavering support was my anchor, but little did we know, a storm was brewing. The doorbell rang, and there stood Evelyn, Michael's mother, radiating her usual air of disapproval. Michael, we need to talk alone, Evelyn said, her eyes darting toward me with barely concealed contempt. Reluctantly, Michael followed her to the kitchen. I couldn't help but overhear their conversation. Michael, you need to think about your future. This situation with Laura isn't going anywhere. Evelyn's voice was firm and cold. Mom, I love Laura. We're not giving up on having a family, Michael replied, his tone resolute. You mean in here, someone to carry on the family name? Maybe it's time to consider other options, Evelyn suggested, her words cutting through me like a knife. That night, as Michael and I lay in bed, his arm wrapped around me, he whispered, don't listen to her, Laura, we'll prove her wrong. Days turned into weeks, And our hope was reignited when I finally got a positive pregnancy test. We were over the moon, but the joy was short-lived. During a family dinner, Evelyn's toxic words dampened our spirits. A baby with her health issues? Let's see how long this lasts, Evelyn muttered, just loud enough for us to hear. I felt a lump in my throat, but Michael squeezed my hand under the table. We're going to be fine, love, he reassured me. The following months were a roller coaster of emotions. Our friends gathered for the baby shower, and even Evelyn put on a facade of excitement. But her eyes, cold and calculating, never missed a beat. Make sure you take care of yourself, Laura. We wouldn't want anything to happen to the baby, Evelyn said, her voice dripping with insincerity. I will, Evelyn. Thank you, I managed to reply, masking my discomfort. As my due date approached, Michael and I prepared the nursery. The walls were painted a soothing pastel blue, and the crib stood ready for our little miracle. It's perfect, isn't it? Michael said, beaming with pride. It's everything we've ever dreamed of, I replied, my heart swelling with love and anticipation. However, our dreams were shattered when complications arose during labor. The doctors rushed me into surgery, and I awoke to the heartbreaking news that our baby boy didn't make it. Holding each other, Michael and I wept for the child we never got to meet. Yet, in the midst of our grief, Evelyn's words echoed in my mind, I told you so. Despite the pain, we refused to give up. With each other's support, we faced the challenges head-on, determined to overcome the hurdles life threw at us. Our love is stronger than any obstacle. Laura, we'll get through this, Michael assured me, his voice a soothing balm to my aching soul. In our journey through despair and hope, we discovered the true meaning of resilience and the strength of unconditional love. Our story was far from over, and we were ready to face whatever came our way together. Months passed after our heartbreaking loss, and just when hope seemed a distant memory, a miracle happened. I was pregnant again. The joy Michael and I felt was indescribable, like sunlight piercing through relentless storm clouds. We embraced this new beginning with open hearts. After years of heartache and unsuccessful attempts, we were finally blessed with the news of my pregnancy. The joy and anticipation that filled our home were palpable. Can you believe it, Laura? We're going to be parents, Michael exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. The months flew by, each day bringing us closer to meeting our little miracle. The nursery was painted a soft pink, and we often sat there, imagining our lives with our baby girl. Finally, the day arrived. After hours of labor, we welcomed our daughter, Emma, into the world. She was perfect in every way, her tiny hands, her soft cries, everything about her filled our hearts with indescribable love. We did it, Laura. She's here, and she's perfect, Michael whispered, tears of joy in his eyes as he held Emma for the first time. Our little family felt complete, but this happiness was delicate, like a fragile bubble. Emma's innocent giggles filled our home, a balm to the scars of our past. One evening during a family gathering, Evelyn and her daughter, Grace, arrived. Their smiles were strained, their congratulations hollow. Evelyn glanced at Emma and then at me, her eyes cold and unfeeling. A girl, huh? Well, let's hope she stays healthy, Evelyn remarked, her words tinged with an ominous undertone. I felt a twinge of discomfort but brushed it aside, focusing on the bundle of joy in my arms. Michael squeezed my hand, a silent promise that nothing would dampen our happiness. The first 3 months of Emma's life were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and endless cuddles, but our bliss was short-lived. Emma fell ill suddenly, her condition deteriorating rapidly. Despite the doctor's best efforts, we lost her. Our world, once filled with the laughter and cries of our baby girl, was now silent, the emptiness echoing off the walls. At Emma's funeral, the air was heavy with grief. Friends and family gathered, their faces etched with sorrow. But amidst the sea of mourners, Evelyn and Grace stood out. Their demeanor was unsettling, no tears, no signs of grief, as if they were untouched by the tragedy. As I stood by Emma's tiny coffin, heartbroken, I caught a glimpse of Evelyn and Grace whispering to each other, a smirk playing on their lips. Their blatant disrespect in such a sacred moment was a shock to my already fragile state. Can you believe it? Another one gone. Maybe it's a sign. Huh? Grace whispered, unaware that her voice carried through the hushed room. Evelyn chuckled softly in response. Perhaps Michael will finally see sense and leave her. I stood frozen, stunned by their audacity as they exchanged smiles and whispers, their laughter a jarring intrusion into the solemn atmosphere. It felt like a slap in the face, a cruel mockery of our profound grief. My heart pounded furiously, anger bubbling inside me. I can't believe they're doing this, I whispered to Michael, my voice trembling. Michael glanced in their direction, his expression shifting from confusion to disgust. I'll talk to them, he said, but I was already making my way toward them. Really, Evelyn? Smiling at a time like this? What is wrong with you? I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. Evelyn turned to me, her smile fading into a smirk. Oh, Laura, always so dramatic. We were just what? Celebrating my daughter's death? I interrupted, my voice rising. The crowd began to take notice, their murmurs growing louder. Michael came to my side, his eyes filled with anger and disappointment. Mom, this is unacceptable. You're at a funeral, Michael said firmly. Evelyn tried to defend herself. We were just talking about what? How relieved you are that my daughter is gone. I was nearly screaming now, my grief morphing into rage. Grace stepped in, her voice dripping with feigned concern. Laura, you're overreacting. We're just as sad as everyone else. No, you're not, I shot back. You've never wanted me to be happy, not with Michael, not with Emma. You've always wanted me out of the picture. The confrontation drew the attention of everyone present. Michael stood resolutely by my side, his arm around me. It was clear where his loyalties lay. I can't do this anymore. Mom, your constant negativity, your disdain for Laura, it's too much. I can't have you in our lives if this is how you're going to act, Michael declared, his voice unwavering. Evelyn's face fell, a mix of shock and disbelief. Michael, you can't be serious. She's manipulating you. No, Mom, I'm seeing things clearly for the first time, Michael replied, his decision final. We walked away, leaving Evelyn and Grace standing amidst the murmurs of the crowd. That day marked the end of our relationship with them. Michael chose to stand by me, and together we faced the world united in our grief and love. In the weeks that followed, our home became a sanctuary, a place where we could mourn in peace, away from judgmental eyes. We leaned on each other, finding comfort in our shared pain. Evelyn was always a part of my life, but I can't have her toxicity around us. Not anymore, Michael said one evening, his voice heavy with sadness. I know it's hard, but I'm so grateful you're standing by me, I replied, my heart swelling with love for the man who became my rock. As time passed, the sharp pain of loss gave way to a dull ache, a constant reminder of what we had lost. We learned to live with it, to build our lives around the gaping hole left by Emma's absence. We'll get through this, Laura, together, Michael would often say, his words a beacon of hope in our darkest moments. Our journey was far from over, but we faced it hand in hand, our love a testament to our resilience. The betrayal of family was a deep wound, but in each other, we found the strength to heal and move forward. Years passed, weaving their way through our lives, bringing healing and new joys. Michael and I were blessed with 4 beautiful children, each a testament to our enduring love and the strength we found in each other. Our home, once shrouded in sorrow, now echoed with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. As our children grew, so did their curiosity. They often asked about their grandmother Evelyn, but the wounds she had inflicted ran deep. Her absence in their lives was a conscious decision, made to protect them from the toxicity that had once threatened our happiness. Then, one day, out of the blue, we received a call. Evelyn was gravely ill, her time drawing to a close. She wanted to see us, to meet the grandchildren she had never known. The news stirred a whirlwind of emotions within me. Why now, Michael? After all these years? I asked, my voice laced with confusion and bitterness. I don't know, Laura, but she's still my mother. Maybe we should let her meet the kids. Just once, Michael replied, torn between his familial ties and the pain of the past. After much deliberation, I agreed, not for Evelyn, but for our children, and perhaps for Michael, to offer him some closure. On the day of her visit, I watched as Evelyn entered our home. She was frail and aged, a stark contrast to the woman who once wielded words like weapons. Our children greeted her politely, unaware of the heavy history that hung in the air like a thick fog. As Evelyn interacted with them, I saw a flicker of regret in her eyes, but it was too little, too late. The chasm between us was too wide, the hurt too deep. Later that evening, after the children had gone to bed, Evelyn turned to me, her eyes weary. Laura, I know I've made mistakes. I'm sorry, truly sorry. Her words, long overdue, did little to stir forgiveness in my heart. Evelyn, I appreciate your apology, but I can't forget what you did, how you made us feel when we needed support the most. Michael sat beside me, a silent source of strength. Mom, we've moved on. We've built a life, a happy one, without the negativity you brought into it, he added firmly. Evelyn nodded, a single tear tracing her cheek. I understand, I just needed to say it, to try and make things right before it's too late. As she left our home that night, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of our lives marked by her bitterness was finally coming to an end. We had moved on, and in the faces of our children, I saw the future, bright and unburdened by the past. We did the right thing, letting her see the kids, Michael said, breaking the silence. Yes, we did. For them, and maybe a little for us too, I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Our story, though marked by trials, was also one of triumph and love. It reminded me that out of despair can come great joy, and in the face of betrayal and hurt, the strength of the human spirit prevails. Laura's journey through heartache and healing leaves us with a thought-provoking question. If you were in Laura's place, would you have allowed Evelyn, the person who caused so much pain, to meet your children in her final days? Is compassion more important than past grievances when someone is seeking forgiveness at the end of their life? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.